He lived on Mount Olympus with 11 other gods and goddesses. Zeus, the king of the gods. He only had one wife, Hera, who was also his sister. But despite that fact, the gods were considered above human constraints. Zeus had many appetites, like the many love affairs with mortal women. Today we will go over some of his more notable love affairs and how devastating this affair can be. Welcome to the history realm. We start with Alcmene, the daughter of the king of Mycenae, was tricked into sleeping with Zeus disguised as her husband, who was away at the time. She was beautiful and irresistible to the lustful Zeus, who had been lustfully eyeing her for some time. She was a moral and virtuous woman, but the cunning Zeus successfully displayed himself as her husband, telling her about his wars and adventures, showing her souvenirs from his battles. Some would call that stolen valor. Anyways, when her actual husband returned, he forgave her infidelity and made love to her. She later gave birth to twins, Heracles, the famous demigod, and a son from her husband named Iphicles. Heracles faced challenges due to the jealousy of Hera, Zeus's wife, but eventually gained full god status after his earthly journey. Another example of an affair would be Antiope. There are a few different versions of this beautiful woman's story, as with most of the other myths of the ancient Greek gods. Antiope was either a princess of Thebes or one of the queens of the Amazons. Zeus shapeshifted into a satyr to have his way with her. In some versions, she was raped by the satyr. Much later in her life, Zeus rescued her when she was enslaved by her uncle's wife, which may indicate that he cared for her. Hera had the assistance of others to make her life difficult. For example, Antiope's uncle forced her to abandon her babies to die in the wilderness, but a shepherd saved and raised them. Zeus sent the messenger god Hermes to teach and train them. I wonder how much child support Zeus had to pay. Anyways, Dionysus, the god of wine, also caused her to go mad after her twin sons killed one of his followers. She wandered the lands until a kind king named Phocus cured and married her. She would eventually live peacefully and grow old gracefully. Antiope and her husband are said to be buried together in the same tomb on Mount Parnassus. If you are enjoying the video, make sure you press the like button. Well, let's move forward. The next affair is with a nymph or naiad of flowing fresh water. She was a follower of Artemis, to whom she had sworn an oath of chastity. She was often on Mount Olympus as part of Artemis's companions. The naiads were known to be sparkling, beautiful, and caring. The Greek god Zeus soon seduced her by shapeshifting into Artemis. After some time, one day when Callisto was bathing and Artemis realized that Callisto was no longer a virgin but pregnant, and Artemis expelled her from her group of virgin followers. Callisto gave birth to a son, Arcas, while alone in the forest. Hera's revenge was to change her into a brown bear. Once again, Zeus intervened by sending Hermes to take Callisto's son to be raised in safety. Eventually, bear mother and human son met when Arcas nearly killed his mother in bear form. Zeus intervened faster than a rat up a drainpipe and set them up in the sky as the constellations forever. Do you think Zeus actually cared about them? Or was he just trying to cover his tracks? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, let's move on. Danae was the only child of the king of Argos. An oracle told the king that one day his grandson will murder him. The king imprisoned his lovely daughter in a bronze tower, or in an alternate version of the story, in a bronze tomb beneath his palace, in order to prevent her from ever bearing children. Zeus transformed into a cloud and descended into Danae's prison as a shower of golden rain to impregnate her. Since no human could break through the bronze prison, the king came to the conclusion that the child's father must be an ancient Greek god. He sent his daughter and infant grandson off into the blue sea in a chest. Zeus intervened with the help of his brother Poseidon. They both drifted ashore at the Greek island of Seriphos in the Aegean, where a fisherman took them in. She later married the king of the island. Perseus, Danae's son, went on to become one of Greek mythology's most well-known heroes. He did wind up killing his grandfather, albeit unintentionally, when the king was struck by a discus that Perseus had thrown during a sporting event in a nearby state. You know what they say, what goes around comes around, and in this case it was a discus that came around. Alright, let's move on to another victim who caught the eye of Zeus. Europa, a beautiful and an ideal personification of ancient Greek womanhood. A princess from the ancient Phoenician city of Tyre. Europa and her friends were picking flowers and wandered onto the beach one day, when the Greek god Zeus shapeshifted into a beautiful white bull among the herd of cattle nearby. He was soon noticed by the girls, who were encouraged to pet him by his submissive demeanor. Europa eventually climbed on his back, and as soon as she was on his back, Zeus headed for the ocean. Europa was startled and had no choice but to hang on in terror. The bull swam with her on his back all the way to Crete. Here, Zeus had his way with her, and she became pregnant. In contrast to Zeus's earlier conquests or flings, Europa's tale ends happily. He bestowed upon her certain gifts, and her 3 sons rose to prominence as successful kings of their own kingdoms. Among them was Minos of Knossos, with the beautiful palace on the island of Crete. It seems that for once, a victim of Zeus's lust escaped Hera's watchful eye, and in the aftermath, a continent was named after her. Okay, now for our last story. Leto was a goddess descended from the Greek gods that came before the Olympians, known as the Titans. Zeus became interested in her, and they began a relationship. Hera banished her from Olympus and cursed her to wander the earth when she became pregnant. People were too terrified to provide her with sanctuary for fear of Hera's vengeance after she summoned the Python, a monstrous son of Gaia, to monitor her. Zeus eventually led her to shelter on a newly formed floating island, Delos, where she could deliver her twins. In return for sheltering her, Leto changed Delos into a permanent and lush island. Here she could, at last, deliver her children, but the spiteful Hera tried to prevent the births by keeping the goddess of childbirth away from her through a cloud cover. You can say, Hera was too shady for that move. Anyways, Leto gave birth to Artemis, goddess of the hunt, and after 9 agonizing days to Apollo, god of light and of prophecy. The children helped protect Leto from Hera. They were both adept at shooting with bow and arrow, and Apollo killed the Python. This would allow Leto to eventually return quietly to live on Mount Olympus. Well, there you have it. 6 notable love affairs that Zeus had in Greek mythology. If you found this topic interesting, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more upcoming stories in the future. I have also left another video on Greek mythology here above for you to check out. Until next time, on the History Realm.